All right, guys. I just finished up. Actually, it was yesterday I finished. No, it's today. I finished up listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast on how to learn skills faster. And if you watched one of my other videos called Make It Stick Overview, I proposed a question. When learning a motor skill, should I mass practice in order to initially learn? If so, when do I say I've learned it and transition into practice using interleaved space and varied practice? So I've been having this hard time. Reconciling these two different things: motor skill learning, that is when I'm playing guitar, and theoretical learning, such as school academic work and business theory and stuff like that, books. I've been having a hard time for years to reconcile these two different things, and a big breakthrough for me, first of all, was realizing that they're two different things. The motor skills and motor learning and theoretical learning. And there's some similarities, but they're not the same thing, and I treated them like the same thing for a long time. And so I'm still trying to reconcile these two worlds and to figure out which works in one, what doesn't work in one, and what works in the other, and what doesn't work in the other. Because in the theoretical world, aka word-based knowledge, such as books, things you read in books, stuff you study in school, these things, one of the biggest things you do not want to do, like like everyone says, do not do this, absolute waste of time, worse than wasting your time, it's like horrible use of time for studying, is called mass practicing. And that is going over the same thing over and over and over and over again. So if you had a math problem, it'd be repeating the same problem over and over again with no spacing in between. You just do it, you do it again, you do it again, you do it again. It starts to feel easy, and then you go away and you come back and you can't do it anymore, or it's like it wasn't learned that well. It could have been learned much better if you would have interleaved it. And interleaving means to put other problems in between that one. You do that one and then you mix it up with other problems, and you come back to a similar problem, do it again. That's much more effective. And space repetition. So you do it once, then you take a break, then you come back, then you do it again, then you go to bed, then you do it the next day. And you do it over time. Instead of doing all the reps in one, like 20 reps in a row, you do one rep, break, come back the next day, another rep. And so that's how I treated guitar and motor learning skills, but apparently that is really actually not very effective. And in fact, when you're learning motor patterns, you want to just repeat that pattern over and over again as many times as possible within a span, whatever your learning session is. Say it's 10 minutes. Say it's, all right, I want to turn this air conditioner on. Thank you, air conditioner. I needed to take a break and let my thought. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, apparently when you're learning motor skills, you do want to mass practice. You want to mass practice to the max. You want to take this pattern you're trying to learn, and you want to, within your learning session, maximize the amount of reps you perform in the amount of time, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour or whatever it may be. I think 10 minutes to an hour is a good range. Maybe 5 minutes to an hour and a half, that's a bigger range. But I would say for most things you want to do, 10 to maybe an hour for a learning session. And you want to go for density of reps rather than amount of time. So you want to do, like, if you can only do 10 minutes worth of focus on something and do it for 10 minutes, then only do it for 10 minutes. Don't do it for 20 minutes and spread out the reps and take twice as much time to do the same amount of reps. That's worse. You want to do as many reps as possible within a given amount of time, and that way your brain starts to see all these errors you're making. Error, and then, like, one of these times you get lucky and you hit it right, and your brain's like, yep, that was good, yep. And then that will lead to the fastest level or rate of motor skill learning. maximum density within a given amount of time that you're practicing. And so after that, after you mass practice in motor skills, you never want to mass practice, almost never in theoretical knowledge, for lack of a better word. I'm just calling it theoretical knowledge. You never want to mass practice in that. Like that's saying like this flashcard. You do the flashcard, you repeat the flashcard, you keep looking at the same, you memorize. Got it. You put the definition away and then you comes back and you're like, I don't know it. That's mass practicing. You don't want to do that. Motor skills, you do want to do that. I know. And, this takes time to learn. You want to mass practice that. And once you're done, you want to idle. And that means you close your eyes and ideally you'd have maybe headphones on and close your eyes and you lay there and you do nothing. And right then and there, after you do the maximum amount of density of that same repetition, you don't even want to change the timing. You don't want to change the tempo. You don't want to change anything. You do the same thing over and over again for whatever period of time. Then after that, close your eyes, close your ears, lay down, and you just try to think of nothing. You basically just lie there and relax. And in that time you're idling, your brain's actually going to start to consolidate and to prune the information. It's going to start throwing out the bad reps and it's going to start highlighting and replaying the good reps. And just a fun fact is that when you're doing this, your brain's actually playing the pattern backwards for whatever reason, unknown, at least at the time of that podcast, which was like 2021. But yeah, that idle period is massive. And the time frame I'm using right now is I'm basically going for 10-minute reps most of the time, or 10-minute sessions, and then I'll do 3 minutes of idle. But if you did an hour, I think a good amount would be 10 minutes of idle, hour study or mass practicing the motor skill pattern, 10 minutes of idle. And kind of maybe keep that ratio. If it's 30 minutes, 5 minutes of idle. I just say 10, 3, because it could be 10, whatever that would be, about a minute, a little over a minute, but nope, I go for 3, because it takes time to lay down and everything. Whatever, kind of besides the point. Mass practice to learn motor skills, do not mass practice to learn academic skills. Okay. He talks a lot, Huberman, in this podcast, he talks a lot about placing attention. Where do you place your attention? Well, it doesn't matter in the initial sessions when you're first learning a movement. You're going to be making so many errors, like for guitar or whatever you're doing. Specifically for me, for guitar, I'm making so many errors, it's pissing me off, and that's where my attention's going. Is trying to fix these errors in real time. That's where my attention's going. Okay, once you can start playing those, say you come back the next day and you're pretty good now. You can play it once in a while, maybe a quarter of the times you're playing the thing correctly. Then you want to just start paying attention to something, one thing only during a learning session. And it doesn't really matter as long as it's related. You can focus on just your fingers moving. You can focus on the sound, but you probably shouldn't switch back and forth. You want to pick one. And that's just going to accelerate learning even further. And then finally, after you start, you're doing it pretty good, pretty well. Once you're really starting to get good, you can start switching your attention. You're going listening to the sound, finger movements, whatever. As long as it's related, I don't know much else for guitar besides the finger movements and the sound feedback. Maybe the visual feedback, but I think closing your eyes is probably good at one of these stages before this. Once you can do that, eyes closed, you're playing it well most of the time, probably more than 50%, then you can switch from back and forth, and that'll actually speed it up even more. So that's very, very a lot, right? So complex, so intricate. But I'm working on it right now. I'm trying to use it. Okay, next level of this is, how long do I do the chunk for? How long do I do, when do I repeat If I have a 1 minute solo, should I just loop the 1 minute solo and keep playing that? Probably not. If the problem is that my fingers, say for the guitar, can't move fast enough or aren't moving correctly, even it's like a finger motor thing. It's not like I haven't learned it. Like if I just learned, like if I know how to play the G chord and the A chord and the D chord and I just don't know the progression, then um where was I at with this? If I know how to play it already, or if I can physically play it, if I can, then that's a different story. But for the things that like I physically cannot play, it's too fast, it's too intricate, I need to rep those. I'll chunk it between 5 and 15 seconds. I think that's what I've seen as potentially optimal for a motor chunk to learn. So 5 to 15 seconds, I'll chunk that and then I'll do it for 10 minutes, which means I'll get about, if it's a 10-second clip, 6 per minute, I'll get about 60 reps in 10 minutes. And then likely my theory here is to do it once per day. But beyond this 10 minutes, it's going to be diminishing returns, and it's actually going to be faster to like chunk here for 10 minutes instead of 20, and then do another for 10 minutes. So do two different chunks for 10 minutes each rather than just do one for 20. That's just a complete hypothesis. All this stuff is like hypotheses. I'll tell you that much. Like, learning science seems really simple and very straightforward when you start out, because you know so little and you just get a little information. You hear one fact, you're like, oh, then this is good. Then that's so simple. But then once you start really diving into it and you learn, like what I've been doing with all the different definitions of learning, you're like, what even is learning? We're calling conditioning learning. We're calling like Pavlovian classical conditioning learning, operant conditioning learning, motor skills learning, or associative learning, like this, like declarative knowledge, like the theoretical knowledge I've been describing. It goes very deep, and trying to parse this all and find optimal learning skills and techniques, especially when there's so many different studies. And the thing I have a problem with Huberman is, like with this podcast at least, is it sounded like he was drawing off like single studies. He's like, this study has done some really good work, it looks really good, but it's like, okay, maybe true, maybe those studies have had like people repeat them and that's why he's talking about them. But yeah, if they have repeatable studies, then sure. But I think meta-analyses are the best. The problem is meta-analyses take a long time to curate, and they're pretty general typically. Yeah. Another thing is, the more errors you make in a learning session, the more neuroplasticity. Like those errors are what open up the potential for neuroplasticity. Okay, so we went from me being like, no, don't ever mass practice, to now me saying, don't mass practice unless it's motor skill. And it's a motor skill that you physically cannot play. I'm going to bridge this gap someday, but there's memorization, like I was saying. Like, if you know how to play chords and you know how to play every chord in a song, you just don't know the progression of the song, that's very different than you can't play a riff because your fingers won't move fast enough or in the right positions. That's different. That's literally a motor skill. The second thing is a motor skill thing. The first thing is like a theoretical thing. Like, it's like you memorizing a sentence. You know the words, you know English. You got to memorize the sentence. And in that case, I would have to think that mass practicing is not what you want to do. Just like you want to mass practice, memorize a sentence just by repeating it. Maybe you would though at first, and then you put it into like a Anki, a spaced repetition. Depends on if you want to memorize something or if you want to learn it, and if there's a difference there. Is there a difference between memorization and learning? I think so. That's another big question. Is there a difference between memorization and learning it? And if so, what is it? This stuff goes so deep. Maybe I'll have to someday write a book or something on all this stuff that I'm trying to figure out about learning, because there's good resources, but I'll say the Learning How to Learn course I took on Coursera, A Mind for Numbers, the book, and other books I've seen about learning, including Make It Stick. I've not heard things that Huberman was saying about learning, about where to place your attention, about mass practicing and errors. I have heard some things about errors, but is memory different, or is memorization different than learning? And if so, how? Okay, that's where I'll wrap it up here. What will I call this video? My new motor skill learning approach.